This episode is supported in part by Sacred Wright's public scholarship on religion, gender, and sexuality through a grant from the E. Rhodes and Leona B. Carpenter Foundation. You can find Sacred Wrights online at sacred-rights.org and the Carpenter Foundation at carpenterfoundation.us. Welcome to Classical Ideas. This is Greg Soden. My guest on this episode is Reverend Dr. Christina Lizardy-Hajbi from Iliff School of Theology. Dr. Lizardy-Hajbi's interests include organizational leadership, liberative, theological, and post-colonial approaches to ministry, church vitality and growth, young adult spirituality, and intersectional pedagogical practices. An ordained minister in the United Church of Christ, her ministry has included denominational leadership and research, intercultural and interreligious student affairs and undergraduate higher education, hospital chaplaincy, and Christian education and faith formation. She is the author of Unraveling Religious Leadership, Power, Authority, and Decoloniality from Fortress Press in 2024. On this episode, we discuss Puerto Rico, Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime performance, the civil religion of the NFL in the United States, and the reactions of the American right. Please enjoy our conversation. Reverend Dr. Christina Lizardy-Hajbi, welcome to Classical Ideas.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I am delighted that you're here, and I'm really excited for our conversation today. And I'd like to start this off by just having you introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners out there so they know just a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Great. My name is Christina Lizardy-Hajbi. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I am a biracial Puerto Rican Italian woman who was born and raised in southern Colorado, northern New Mexico. I currently am the Associate Professor of Leadership and Formation at Iliff School of Theology in Denver, Colorado. And I also oversee all of the contextual education programming for our MDiv students, our Master of Divinity students, related to their degree programs. So, before that, I was a denominational researcher. I worked for the United Church of Christ for 7 years, overseeing data collection and research, and I'm also an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ. So that's a little bit about me at this point. Is that enough?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just love hearing people's backstories a little bit because it really helps contextualize the work that they do and where they're coming from. And it's just nice for people to know that kind of stuff. Tell me a little bit about your academic path. Like, what was your journey like to finding your areas of interest in your scholarly work?
That's a great question. So I don't think I ever set out or intended to be an academic or a faculty person. I think that path made itself apparent over time. I came to the academy through ministry. And so I started as a student at Iliff School of Theology in 2002, which is now 23 years ago. Graduated over 20 years ago with my Master of Divinity and moved into official ministry. I never felt called to a local church, however, and so my path has always been ordained in non-congregational settings. So at first I served as a multicultural, intercultural student affairs director at a small private liberal arts college, did that for several years. And I got my PhD while I was doing that work. So my doctoral work is actually in education and not in religion or theology, which is really interesting, but has also provided me a set of skills that are really relevant to theological education and relevant to the research work that I've done and that I currently do. So after that, I did move into the work of being a denominational researcher, served my church there for 7 years, and after that, found a position at Iliff School of Theology, my alma mater, and working with field education, which is contextual education for students preparing to be ministers and in ministry, and also do a fair amount of teaching in this work. So, my own background around curriculum as an educator, having a PhD in that, and also around research, which is educational research. Research skills apply across the board. It's quantitative and qualitative skills. So that has also been really helpful in my own journey. I consider myself interdisciplinary in that regard. So I am part, I guess, practical theologian by way of leadership studies and contextual education, and then also a sociologist of religion on the more quantitative, qualitative research side, and have done scholarship in that area as well. It all comes together through a decolonial and post-colonial theoretical lens, which is what I do my teaching, my research, and my writing through.
Excellent. Well, and I know you have a book as well that's kind of recent, Unraveling Religious Leadership, Power, Authority, and Decoloniality from Fortress Press in 2024. Do you have any sort of takeaways from that book project now that it's been out in the world for a couple of years?
I think books take on a life of their own after one writes them, and it's been really joyful to see the ways that that book has continued to live on and live forward. I know that it's taught in many seminary courses on leadership and contextual education, and so I have a fair amount of opportunities to offer lectures and things like that. And it's just wonderful to see the evolution and the afterlives of the things that we write. I wrote that book in the fall of 2022 for tenure. And so that was my tenure book, is what I earned tenure with. And I'm doing actually a follow-up book now, writing a book that is based on sociological research of BIPOC ministers and looking at practices of decoloniality. So that will be a much different book, less, I think, quote unquote, traditionally academic in the way this first one was written, but will be more creative. It's a decolonial theopoetic conversations based on
Excellent.
interview transcripts from those BIPOC ministers. So it's going to be very different, but that's my post-tenure book that will be coming out in 2027 as a complement to that book.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to get into some really fun conversations today, very timely as well, considering it seems to be all anybody in the country can talk about at the moment. But we're going to chat a little bit about your work that you've recently been doing involving the Super Bowl, the halftime performance of Bad Bunny and Lady Gaga and Ricky Martin and others. But first, I want to know about your life as a football fan because I'm a huge football fan, which I never get to talk about on this podcast. So I am very curious where your what your football experience is like.
Yes, I love watching football. I like you, I'm a fan. I have a deep love for the Denver Broncos. I have ever since I was a child, and so that is my ride or die team. I was really sad that they lost in the AFC Championship this year. And it was totally understandable because the quarterback, Bo Nix, was injured. And so he couldn't play in the championship game, which is fine. But they had an incredible season. I do enjoy watching football on Sundays, Mondays, Thursdays, Saturdays, all the days, whenever I can. And I often just have it on in the background while I'm doing other work as well. My spouse and I both enjoy football, American football, and we both enjoy football that the rest of the world watches too. And my spouse especially is very invested in football more globally. But just to say that I love football, and I love thinking about and talking about the spiritual aspects of football, and that I think football in there are many different civil religions that we in the United States have. I think football is one of those civil religions. And just to share a little bit about that, I was really struck. You may not remember this game, but on January 4th of this year, I think it was the game to clinch the AFC North, and it was against the Ravens and
The
the
Steelers, yeah.
Steelers. which was a really good game. If you watch that game toward the end, Baltimore missed two field goals. They missed the last two field goals and they lost the game because of that. And the Steelers clinched the AFC North. And if you know anything about Pittsburgh, it's a historically Catholic city. And after that, because it was really uncommon for Baltimore to miss those two field goals, very strange. And they showed a video of before the game, a priest sprinkling holy water on the field. And so fans kept talking about how that sprinkling was the reason that the Steelers won and Baltimore missed those final two field goals. And I just, the way that religious faith and practice mixes with civil religion of football is very fascinating too.
Yeah, well, and here in Buffalo, who lost that game for the
Yes.
AFC Championship to go to the AFC Championship to the Broncos, which is fine. It's the way it goes. In my opinion, we earned that loss with those turnovers that absolutely
Yes.
killed us.
Yeah.
So there's no hard feelings here. I promise. I have nothing but nice things to say about Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton and Pat Surtain and the whole crew. They're a great team.
Good.
And I was at the game here in Buffalo last year where the Bills beat the Broncos in the playoffs last season during Bo
That's right.
Nix's first playoff appearance. So I was at that game way up in the upper deck, almost in the last row. And what a cool experience
Wow.
that was. But here in Buffalo, um, anybody who's ever been here knows that the Bills, the city just like revolves around the Bills and Josh Allen and that team. So I completely get it because if you are cut off from what the Bills are doing, you are not as much of a fabric of the city as
Yeah.
everybody else. And I don't mean to say that the people that aren't football fans are like not Buffalonians as well, but I lived here for several years not watching football when I first moved here. And the second I allowed myself to become engaged with it, Buffalo became home in a way that it hadn't been before because I'm a transplant here. So until I accepted the Bills into my life, and you'll see I'm phrasing that very specifically, until I accepted the Bills into my life, it didn't feel like home, if that makes sense. It felt like a place that I
Absolutely.
lived. So,
Yeah, absolutely. It follows the trajectory of when we think of belonging in a faith community or community in general, of that sort of belief, right? You became a believer, you started to engage with others, behave in the way, and then you belonged. You belonged in the tradition and the religion of football. And a lot of towns are built that way. I mean, I think the most obvious one is Green Bay, but you look
mhm.
at cities like Pittsburgh, the city revolves around the Steelers in the same way and game day and the Broncos in a similar way, although I'm not sure in the same way that some of those towns in the Northeast are.
Yeah. Well, I think that Denver is just a way bigger city with a little bit more opportunity with regards like with Green Bay and Buffalo, we're the two smallest markets in the whole NFL.
Yes.
And so those two places in particular are quite special, in my opinion. And obviously the Steelers are such an institution as well. Um, but yeah, it's a pretty wild experience considering that I didn't really care about football for over 35 years of my life, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm a relatively new fan and it really has just grabbed a hold of me. But right now I'm so happy the season is over because now I can like have a break and focus on some other things. Like I'm reading a sci-fi novel right now by Kim Stanley Robinson, and I'm like so into it. And I'm like, holy smokes, I actually am enjoying reading for fun because I'm not trying to watch, 5 games a week. Um,
Yes,
so I'm,
there's a way that the hectic, there are seasons, just like there are seasons of a church year. There are seasons of football, and they take our time and our space and our energy. And when they're done, we can focus on other things, post Easter, post Christmas, all of that.
yeah. Well, and when I go to games, it's like an 8 hour commitment too, because my fiance has been a season ticket holder for a long time, and I have a lot of opportunities to go with her group as well. But when we go, I mean, we go 5 hours. We leave the house 5 hours before the game starts. We meet up. We caravan over. We sit in traffic for an hour on a road called Southwestern right next to the stadium until they open the gates 4 hours before the game starts. And then we pile into the lot and then we set up our tent, we set up our grill, we set up our fire pits, and we set up our music. And then we go to town for 3.5 hours. And then we tear it all down, throw it back in the car, and then we go in the game. And then the game is, 3 hours plus long. And then by the time we get back to the car, and then we sit in traffic for an hour leaving the lot. I mean, we're talking about a 9 hour day just to be in that stadium with those other people having that shared experience. So
That's right.
it's a big commitment. But you also are interested deeply in the music of what just happened in the Super Bowl just a couple of days ago. And I was so excited that you wanted to talk about this. And you have a piece that you sent me called Songs That Call Me Home to Puerto Rico. What inspired you to write this piece, just in general? And then I want to talk about Bad Bunny, the person, but we can talk. What inspired you to write this piece in general?
For me, Bad Bunny has been a source of not only spirituality in some ways, but reconnection to my Puerto Rican roots. And so I'm a second generation diasporan born Puerto Rican. And my dad passed away when I was 18, and we lived in Colorado, disconnected from all the family that lived back east. My dad grew up in the Bronx in New York. But I have grandparents that grew up and were born in Puerto Rico and then came to the mainland at various points in their lives. And I feel often disconnected from that because I don't share the language in the same way. I mean, I grew up around Chicanos in southern Colorado, northern New Mexico, who speak a completely different version of Spanish than Puerto Ricans do. And it's hard for me to translate because there's different words. The rhythm is different. Puerto Ricans speak much more quickly, use different slang. And so I grew up disconnected from that. And so Bad Bunny's music has really reinvigorated sort of my sense of who I am as a Puerto Rican, where I come from, my roots, and really given me a sense of pride in who I am, racially and ethnically. And um, I would say that his music, his lyrics, the rhythms speak very deeply to me, right? In an embodied way. And I remember my dad playing these same rhythms and these same songs as a child growing up, the plena, the bomba, in our house growing up. And so those things have reconnected me to my family, to my roots in a very particular way. And I've had lots of opportunities since then to spend time in Puerto Rico, to go and be there and be present. And for me, it's been a really lovely journey, and a large part of that is because of Bad Bunny's music. Even years ago, I was drawn to his music, but this last album that he's done really is one of the single best albums I've ever experienced.
Amazing. Have you seen him live before?
I have not seen him live. He did his residency in Puerto Rico, and I was so sad that I wasn't able to go. I went to Puerto Rico earlier this year, um, and I was able to get some. I mean, I have newspapers that talk about the residency and all of that, but have not ever seen him live. In the article, I talk about watching the live streamed final concert of his residency that he live streamed for the world. And that for me was a spiritual experience. So he was able to open up that concert to everyone who was unable to get tickets. But people I've talked to who went to the residency this summer talked about it as a spiritual experience.
Wonderful. Well, and in the article, something that really captured my attention too is how you write about feeling disconnected from that heritage growing up. Does Bad Bunny help you reconnect to an identity that you had felt, was lost to you?
Absolutely, absolutely. For me, I don't think my identity was ever lost. I mean, I've known, I mean, my parents were very clear, you're Puerto Rican. This is who you are. Be proud of that, right? Your name is Lizardi. But just be proud of all of that. And I don't know if I lost it, but there is a sense of disconnection of not growing up with around others who are Puerto Rican, and who have that cultural aspect. And so I didn't grow up around the culture. And so rediscovering aspects of that culture. I mean, we only had my dad, who was the cultural representative for us. But being reconnected in that way to the culture and reconnecting my sense of self, I think was the really meaningful part for me.
Excellent. You said your dad, he was a New York guy, right?
Mhm.
And he moved away from New York City?
Yeah, both my parents did. Both my parents grew up in New York, and both of my parents on both sides were not born in the mainland U.S. My Italian grandparents were born in Italy, and so
Hmm.
my mom and her sibling was the first to be born in the United States, and my dad was born in the U.S., but his parents were not born on the mainland.
Hmm.
Puerto Rico only became or Puerto Ricans on the island only became citizens in 1917, and that happened just a few short months before we became a part of World War I. So the U.S., joined the fight in World War I, and that was a very strategic move on the part of Congress to get more soldiers. And so we said, we'll give you a limited form of government for as Puerto Ricans on the island. And then, you have to sign up to serve in the war. And so that's been a legacy of Puerto Rico and other colonies of the U.S., including Guam and other places as well.
I was not aware that Puerto Rico's given representation, that limited representation, was around getting people to go to war and
Yep.
probably die. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's a very interesting history, and Puerto Ricans and folks from Guam serve at higher rates, and have throughout the last 100 years than folks on the mainland, right? And so that's been a huge part. I'm actually in the process of writing an article now, another article for the Christian Century that hopefully will come out later this year around the remilitarization of Puerto Rico,
Hmm.
especially with Trump now reopening some of the bases that have been closed for decades, as a strategic military component to his plan to, control most of the Western Hemisphere and most of the world. But the first place that the plane stopped after they had captured Maduro from Venezuela was Aguadilla, which is one of the bases in Aguadilla on the island of Puerto Rico before they
Hmm.
moved him to extradite to New York. And it was I don't know if it was the reopened base, but they are starting to reopen bases that had been closed, and one of them had been closed due to continued protests from people on the island because over the 50 years of its existence, it had been doing nuclear testing and polluting the water and the land and causing increased cancer rates and all of that. So that closed in 2004, Vieques. And so that is, I think, at this point going to be reopened by Trump. So there's a lot of history there that most people on the mainland don't know about. I've had to do a lot of research into that history, and some of that history was also told to me by my dad, but in very small bits and bytes. And so there's a lot there. And there was a lot there in terms of symbolism from what Bad Bunny did that connects directly to that history and to the ongoing colonial status and work and advocacy toward independence. Puerto Rico is the longest continual colony in the world. It was colonized by Christopher Columbus in 1493 and has remained a colony of either Spain or the United States since then.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, the Puerto Rican diaspora is a really interesting observation as well. Like whenever you said that your dad grew up in New York City, I was thinking about the strength of the Puerto Rican community in New York City in general. And then also here in Buffalo, New York, there's a massive Puerto Rican population here in this city. So like the colonial history drives people all over the world, it seems like.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and there are lots of different reasons for that, but there are concentrations of Puerto Ricans in the Northeast, right? Philadelphia, Buffalo, New York City is definitely one of the historic ones. You've got Florida, Orlando, that place. Colorado, there wasn't much, and there's still not much, but we are present. We are present mostly in the Metro Denver area, but there's a smaller community of us. And so, in many ways, folks who grew up in those places, Chicago's another one. Chicago's huge, huge Puerto Rican community. And yeah, I think the ways in which we grow up around that culture or don't grow up around that culture also shape who we are. There's often been tensions too between people who grew up on the island and people who grew up in the diaspora, and there's language differences there too. And I think what Bad Bunny has done with his music in acknowledging both the struggles and on the island and people in the diaspora, and he's been very intentional with that, and you saw that in his Super Bowl performance as well. His message is about unity and bringing people together, and that love is stronger than hate. And so I appreciate also that message, and it gave me an ability to say, "Oh, I'm Puerto Rican too. I'm not Puerto Rican in the way you're Puerto Rican, but I'm also Puerto Rican."
Mm. I want to do a little recap of Bad Bunny's performance, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
So I was watching it, and obviously I was just taking it in and just seeing what happened, and gonna do some reading about it later. And so I really love the way that the sugarcane fields, with dancers who are inside costumes, comes out and sort of sets the stage. Tell us a little about what we see in the beginning and what you noticed.
Yeah, the sugarcane fields are a reference. I think they're a direct reference to colonization, right? And the colonial project that has been Puerto Rico. Huge sugarcane fields were cultivated in order to produce sugar for the United States. I think that's the same with coffee. That's the same with some other larger products. The land wasn't always meant for that and wasn't always used for that on the island. Monocrop farming is a colonial invention, and so the ways that I think has hurt the land is one piece, especially in when it comes to hurricanes. And so the resilience of those plants and the crops and the kinds of things that are born take on a different form than when you have multiple things being grown, deeper roots. There's a lot of stuff there environmentally. Historically, though, what I saw was also the slaves, right? Working and they have the traditional white outfits and the hats, the pava hats, and that they wore, right, in doing that work. And Puerto Rico has a rich history, right, and a very multicultural global history because slaves were brought by Spain to work in those fields alongside others who were indigenous to the island. And so we're all different shades as Puerto Ricans. We're white, we're black, we're brown, we're everything in between. And so you saw some of that in the opening with that traditional dress, but it was a nod specifically to the slaves who had been working those fields and their resistance in wearing white
Mm.
in the midst of that work as well.
So the first song, Titi Me Pregunto, in the performance, a couple gets engaged. What did you make of the first section of songs where this couple gets engaged on the field?
Oh, it's such a good song. And that song is from his previous album, Un Verano Sin Ti, which also was nominated for Grammy Album of the Year. Didn't win, of course, but it's a great song, a fun song, talking about love. An aunt asking, who's your girlfriend? He says, well, I've got lots of girlfriends, but the video itself, I don't know if you've even seen the video for that song. It's his aunt asking him questions as he's a young boy. And that's just part of the culture. Like it's the family asking questions about those things, and it's about the family. It's about people coming together. And so the proposal that happens in that first song in that first sequence of the show is really fun. And then you see later this couple getting married, which was an actual couple getting married, and they decided to send a wedding invitation to Bad Bunny. They just did. And he said, okay. And so he put them in the halftime show and they actually got married. And you see the party happening and you see, I mean, this is just what happened. It's how people got married on the island in the diaspora. And you see even the subtle moment where a little kid is sleeping on the chairs at the wedding reception and he wakes up the child. I mean, that is just so quintessentially Puerto Rican, but also just Latine. That is just how we are as people, and that's just what we do. We're just everywhere, and kids are falling asleep at the party because it's too late, and just it's just joy and merriment and a lightness. And that song brought that lightness to begin.
Wonderful. Well, and he's also got all these stands set up, right? There's a coconut stand, there's a nail salon stand, there's other food vendor stands. Tell me about what like the setting was like on the set for what you might see like in a normal town in Puerto Rico or in the cities.
Yeah, I mean that's something you see everywhere. In the island and even in New York. I mean, I remember my dad telling me about um, things that he would eat, right? And the stands that were available. And so that's just all again reminiscent of the food, the sights, the sounds, the smells of Puerto Rican culture. That's really what it is in every element. And he gave some really subtle nods to New Yorican culture in the midst of that too, with the storefront that he had, and yeah, and the Puerto Rican social club. So much
Yeah.
there, and so much beauty, and just that has not been present at a level on an American sort of US stage, especially in the civil religion of football, and ever before. And so it was really historic moment.
Yeah, I really loved who the next song too. We listened to it in the car the next day as well, my daughter and I, but it's Yo Perreo Sola. And that appears in the set as well. Tell me a little bit about this song's appearance in the set list.
Oh, I know this song too. Um, I don't know mu as much about the song itself and sort of the piece, but again, I think another fun song.
I think it's like a
But yeah,
masculinity critique as well.
yes, definitely a masculinity critique. He's known for that. I think also that's part of why the MAGA crowd was so upset in some ways. I mean,
But we'll
there's a
get there,
lot.
don't worry.
Yeah, there was a lot for them to be mad about, but he has been known to subvert and bend gender norms in his own dress, um, and in his lyrics. And so, yeah, that is another example of sort of his way of subverting, but in a way that, um, yeah, is just pure art and also brings a lightness to it.
Yeah, and then I think the next one that he did after that was Monaco. There was a song with had like violins and stuff in it. Was there any particular thoughts that jump out to you about that one?
Yeah, the underlying track for that with the violins, it's actually a French song. And my spouse, who is Moroccan, immediately recognized it. And he knew the song Monaco as well too. But the ability for Bad Bunny to mix global sounds together, it's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful French song. And if you listen to the original song, you'll definitely notice the similarities. But his ability, I think, or just his mastery as a mixer, and what he has brought to the genre of reggaeton while acknowledging the African roots of reggaeton is present there as well. It's present in the people who are playing the violin, in the bodies, black and brown, and it's present in the song itself.
Yeah, and there was a section, I think this is where he also like looked directly into the camera, like really close up. And I think he said, I think I read a translation that was something along the lines of, I believed in myself that I was able to do this. You can do it too, sort of
Mhm.
message that he did like directly into the camera. Do you remember that part?
Yeah, I remember that part. Yeah, that was toward the beginning. Beautiful. What I love is that every moment was intentional.
Hmm.
There are many small moments. There were many moments, and every piece of that was perfectly choreographed and intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then the couple comes back, then they actually get married, but then they go off the stage, and then Lady Gaga shows up with a salsa rendition of one of her recent songs, which is so cool to hear like a modern pop song that you would hear on like the radio anywhere, but then a rendition with some like Latin American influences in the actual tone and the musical performance behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved also that he brought in other artists. I know people had been speculating about that for a while, and the fact of bringing in Lady Gaga and Lady Gaga embracing what Bud Bunny was trying to do in that moment. I know that they've actually partnered before on previous work, but that I think was quite beautiful in a very particular way. There was also a moment, I can't remember if it was before or after Lady Gaga, but he spliced in some pretty classic songs or now classic songs um, around the history of prominent Puerto Rican artists in
Mm.
a Gasolina, if you heard Gasolina,
Oh,
and,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
at
Yep.
one point there was just a very brief, maybe 30-second, where he put together a bunch of songs as a subtle nod to those who have come before him in the Puerto Rican music scene. And that was brilliant.
Yeah, now that I'm looking at my notes, I saw the Gasolina was remixed with Yo Perreo Sola.
Yeah.
So that definitely appeared in there too. And then Ricky Martin shows up, which I was like, I said, "Is that Ricky Martin?" And my fiance was like, "Holy cow, it's Ricky Martin!" Because I haven't seen or heard from Ricky Martin in many, many years, but he was so popular when I was like in early high school.
Mhm.
But Ricky Martin commented, "Loke, Paso, and Hawaii." So there's like a discussion of like the gentrification and colonization of Hawaii as well. So I'd imagine that Hawaii and Puerto Rico have a lot in common in that regard, considering the United States did something very similar to Hawaii, except for Hawaii was able to obtain statehood eventually.
That's a song from his latest album. And during his residency, he invited well-known Puerto Rican artists to sing that song in particular
Mm,
that he wrote. And it's a beautiful song, and it's a warning and you see this throughout his music, this political aspect and this very subtle but also overt in many ways push for independence, to talk about what the cost of colonization has been, and likening that to Hawaii as becoming a state of the United States, and then becoming this tourist hub for largely US citizens, but also folks from Asia as well. I I think it's a message, and he's never shy about this, but through his art he communicates that statehood is not the way, because look at what happened to Hawaii.
mm.
It's a beautiful song, and it's a haunting song, and one of my favorite from his current album.
Yeah, that I'm gonna have to dig into that a little more deeply. But yeah, I lived in Hawaii twice in 2007 and 2011. I did several months there each time working for the YMCA, and we would drive around the island, and you start to see things that you didn't anticipate with regards to like tents in beach parks and homelessness and major problems that just get kind of swept under the rug for the sake of the continuation of the tourist industry there.
Yes.
So that part really jumped out at me when I heard Ricky Martin say Hawaii. I was like, oh wait, what now? Um, so then we jump to the part where I think there's the infrastructure commentary with the light pole, the electrical poles and things like that. What was going on there?
So you see dancers who are supposed to be workers on the electrical poles, and then all of a sudden, fireworks and the lights go out, and it looks like they're being electrocuted. And that is a very non-subtle nod to Luma, which privatized Puerto Rico's electric grid after Hurricane Maria.
Mm.
Uh, and if you've spent any time on the island, been on the island, there are blackouts continually, right? The power grid does not sustain currently the folks who are on the island, and there's been calls for Luma to, to do more, and it's just so the nature of, again, this theme of colonization and look at what it has brought us and what it's continuing to do is is present. So the song he sings as that happens, and he's holding the Puerto Rican flag that was banned for a period of time in Puerto Rico and to be flown in the United States, is El Apagón. That's one of the songs. It's from his previous album. And in that video, I mean, it's definitely a critique of, again, this theme of colonialism and the ways in which the resources of Puerto Rico are being exploited. In the middle of that video, he actually puts in uh, um, a report, a reporter, uh, reporter segment on the corruption of Luma and what it's caused. I mean, he actually produced that specifically for the video. So in the middle of the video is that reporting piece, which is just brilliant. I mean, there's no subtlety about it, right? But his job and he sees his calling in some ways to represent Puerto Rico, all that Puerto Rico stands from, the joys, the beauty, and the challenges that are still being faced. And so that it's really beautiful. And the flag, that light blue is the original color of the flag of Puerto Rico. And it was changed because it didn't reflect the colors of the US flag. So it was
Mm.
changed to a darker blue. And so when people fly that light blue flag, it's saying something, and it's talking about independence and that we are who we are, and we refuse to be changed.
What did you think about his ending where he listed off every single country in the Americas in general?
That was brilliant. He's always said, America is, and many people say that America is not just the United States. When people say America, it is actually a whole hemisphere. And so him listing those countries was an overt way to signal to that and also to create unity, to say we are Americans. And you see on the football, he had it's something to that effect, right? We are all Americans. And it really is a show of unity to say we are here, we are together, and love overcomes hate.
Tell me about your thoughts on the reaction from the American right, the white Christian nationalists. Tell me some of your thoughts and feelings on the reaction to the announcement of Bad Bunny's show, uh, the what happened in response to that. What did you think?
I think in my most compassionate days, it is a sign of deep grief and loss on the
Mm.
part of people who are associated with MAGA, Christian nationalism, white Christian nationalism, because they are losing something and they feel they are losing something, right? They're losing this sense of, for themselves, this pride of identity. What's problematic about that is that it's a totalitarian kind of identity and way of being, to say this is what it means to be American. This is what it means to be a Christian. This is what it means to be um, a white person, right? Like, this is Christianity and Americana are white. They are not non-English, they are not immigrant, they are not these other pieces. There's an irony there because most of us are immigrants to this country, except for those who are indigenous. I'm indigenous to Puerto Rico, but I'm not indigenous to where I currently live. And so we're all immigrants in one way or another. Some of us came here by force, some of us came here by choice. And there's always tensions between those two. And so what MAGA did with this alternative halftime and what Turning Point did with this was something that really um, didn't get the viewership maybe that they were hoping for. It certainly got the news, but it didn't communicate in the way I think it was hoping to have an impact. The Super Bowl halftime show was the most watched halftime show in Super Bowl history. And so I think the message was clear. Even people who didn't understand all the Spanish, I didn't understand all the Spanish either, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
It's not about that.
I speak English, and it doesn't mean that I understood every single word from Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance last year. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
it's the same thing. It's the show, and then it's the fun of unpacking what happened later on to me. It's like, ooh, they put this big puzzle out there, and then now we have to decipher it and spend some time with it and think about it. Like, that's so fun. And I did happen to watch some of the other alternative halftime show thing just because it popped up in my social media feeds, largely making fun of it. But there was one one clip that I cannot get out of my head where the guy's like, "I just want to mow my grass and catch my fish." And the totalitarian thing that you just said really just struck me because here's this person saying, it's so hard being me because all I want to do is mow grass and catch fish. And I'm like, bro, who is stopping you from mowing your grass? And then I went on a big rant this morning to my fiance, which we were laughing about, but I love mowing grass. Okay.
Yeah.
It is one of my favorite things to do in the summer because there's no internet involved. There's no Zoom calls involved. It's just me outside buzzing around on a riding lawnmower. It's hilarious. It's great fun for me. And then this guy gets up there and he's talking about he just wants to mow his grass because he can't mow his grass. And I'm like, you're giving people who like to mow their grass a bad name. I don't want to be lumped in with you. I am on the Bad Bunny train over here, and I also like to mow grass. Thank you very much. So I was really cracking up about this crybaby's like thoughts and feelings about not being able to mow his grass and everything. I was just losing it. I've watched it
Yeah.
5 times because I can't stop thinking about it.
Well, and that's so funny and ironic because you don't have to be a certain ethnic culture or a certain gender or have a certain immigration status to mow your lawn and to
I
enjoy
know.
mowing your lawn. And it
Ugh.
just sort of points to the othering and the really the demonization of the other in a way that doesn't even acknowledge the shared humanity that we all have and caring about our families, caring about our homes, caring about the land, and doing what we enjoy doing, which are, I mean, for better or worse, quintessential US values, right? That we hope would be what those in power and our civic leaders are are doing, are creating that greater sense of unity among us. And it's just unfortunate to see that we're in a place where that is not happening and the opposite of that is taking place.
Well, I appreciate the detailed rundown of the halftime show. That was extremely fun for me. Tell me one last thing I want to know. I found you and we're collaborating because you are a member of the Sacred Rights Public Scholarship Cohort. And I would just like to know, as a professor, what is your view on the importance of professors like you being involved in public scholarship in general, for a wider audience than those beyond just academic journals?
I believe it's absolutely essential. And I think it's essential, particularly for someone like me who is a theologian. I work at a school of theology. Part of my ministry and my own vocation is to help prepare leaders for the world that we're going to be in and that we are in. And so, if we're not ourselves engaging in our scholarship with the world in these same ways, then I think what we are doing as educating folks has less relevance and less meaning for the folks that we're teaching. And so for me, I'm really grateful to the Scholars as Storytellers program and the Narrative Project of Sacred Rights and the Christian Century to give me the opportunity to share my voice and to be a part of public dialogue and public scholarship in this particular way. I also don't think that scholarship can be divorced from who we are as individuals, right? We produce out of who we are. And so this is just another way to give an example to those who we're teaching to say, yeah, we don't do anything out of who we are not, right? Our scholarship and our identity and our personhood and our work in the world should all be connected. And so this is another way to do that for us as educators and scholars to connect who we are and what we do with the broader concerns of the world. So that's my little plug.
Where can people find you if they would like to follow along with what you are doing?
Any social media, I'm mostly on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn these days. I have a Substack, but I haven't started it officially yet. And so that's where folks can find me. I've also got, as I said, another Christian Century article that'll be coming out and a book that'll be coming out next year. So all of that will be posted on social media as well.
Well, I hope you'll consider coming back on the podcast when your book is ready to be talked about.
Yes, I would love to. Thank you.
You are invited. Reverend Dr. Christina Lizardy-Hajbi, welcome. Thank you for coming on Classical Ideas. It's been a pleasure having you here and chatting about Bo Nix and the Broncos and a little bit of Bad Bunny. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Greg. It was a pleasure.